My stepbrother demanded I leave the house on the day of my stepfather's burial. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes betrayal cuts deeper than any family bond. I thought I knew what Richard, my stepfather, truly thought of me, until a reading turned my entire world upside down, revealing a truth more shocking than I could have ever imagined. At 38, I never envisioned I'd be preparing for my stepfather Richard's burial. As I sat organizing old pictures, a tidal wave of memories swept over me. Death has a way of making you revisit a lifetime, both the good and the painfully bad. I was just 9 years old when my mother, Sarah, married Richard. I remember her looking radiant in her simple white dress, eyes full of hope for a new beginning. Richard, on the other hand, was already setting the tone, rigid in his black suit, even on what should have been a joyful day. He insisted on a solemn demeanor, a harshness I would come to know all too well. From the start, Richard was a rigid man, especially when it came to me. He seemed permanently frowning, and I often wondered if he simply couldn't relate to a child who wasn't his own, or if he harbored a deeper resentment at having to assume the role of stepfather. Growing up with him was a constant trial. He critiqued everything, my grades, my clothes, even how I held my fork. "You need to work harder, or this cruel world will chew you up and spit you out," he'd declare almost daily. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if, in his own flawed way, he was trying to prepare me for life, even if all I felt at the time was his sheer nastiness. His rigidity extended to every corner of our lives. I had to sit up straight, use the proper fork, and only speak when spoken to. Any deviation from his expectations earned a stinging stare or a sharp correction. Even family vacations, meant for leisure, felt more like military drills. Richard scheduled everything to the minute, and God help us if we strayed from the plan. I still remember missing a turn once, arriving at a museum 15 minutes late. He was in a terrible mood the rest of the day, grumbling about lost time and inadequate preparation. Everything changed 3 years after the wedding with the birth of my stepbrother Michael. Suddenly, Richard had his own son, and the favoritism was painfully clear. He poured love and compliments on Michael, his face lighting up with a smile I'd never seen before, revealing a side of him I never knew existed. It was like a switch had been flipped. At 12 years old, I was furious and deeply envious. Why did Michael get all the love and attention, while I only received harsh looks and criticism? The difference was agonizing. Michael's smallest achievements were met with huge celebrations, while my own successes, even if significant, were acknowledged with a nod and a remark on how I could improve next time. When I'd protest to Mom about the unfairness, she'd try to reassure me. "Richard loves you too, Jake," she'd say, her eyes pleading for me to understand. "That's just tough love. He wants you ready for the world." But it didn't feel like love. It felt like I was a constant disappointment, always failing in Richard's eyes. Our family dynamic twisted into something I never would have predicted. Years passed, and then Mom fell ill when I was 25. We all rallied around her. Richard, ever stoic, still showed me glimpses of a hidden compassion when he thought no one else was watching. I'd see him gently change her pillows or caress her hand. It was the first time I understood that his lack of affection might have stemmed from his own constraints, rather than a lack of feeling for us. 2 years later, Mom passed away, and it felt as though the very glue holding our family together had dissolved. The funeral was a blur of tears and quiet prayers. Richard stood like a statue throughout, his face a blank mask. Still, I desperately sought some sign of approval from the man who had been my father figure for most of my life. Caring for Richard in his later years was a battle. He fought the limitations his aging body imposed, as tenacious and critical as ever. There were days when the conflict between us was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But occasionally, just occasionally, I'd feel fleeting sparks of gratitude in his eyes, like the time I stayed up all night with him during a sickness, or when I learned to make his favorite foods as he grew too frail to stand at the stove himself. Those moments were rare, though. Most of the time, I felt like I was looking after a stranger who just happened to live in my house. We existed in a tense truce, neither of us truly knowing how to bridge the distance that had grown between us over decades. Richard's character, frankly, made me never even consider a serious relationship or marriage. I wanted none of the issues I was experiencing to confront a future wife or girlfriend. Then, Richard was gone at 65, taken unexpectedly in the evening by a heart attack. Now, as I prepared for his burial, everyone was showing their respects. Michael arrived with Emma and their children, 5-year-old Lily and 3-year-old Max. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked older, more austere, but still exuded that same sense of entitlement I remembered from our early years. The funeral was a depressing affair. I stood there listening to people talk about Richard, a fantastic man, a pillar of the community, always putting family first, and I wanted to laugh at the irony. Did they know the same man I did? The Richard they described seemed like a stranger. Once it was all over and people were dispersing, Michael drew me aside. For a moment, I thought, hoped, maybe he wanted to reconnect, to share memories, to lean on each other in our grief. Instead, he delivered a startling blow that left me reeling. "So about the house," he said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. "I'll need you to leave by the end of the month." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He groaned, casting an intentionally obtuse glance my way. "Clearly the house. Dad turned it over to me. I am his genuine son. You never imagined he would leave it to you." I felt as though I'd been gut-punched. This was it. All these years of trying to be the son Richard wanted, of looking after him, and it came to this? Part of me wanted to fight, to argue for what I felt I had earned through years of conscientious living. But another part, the 9-year-old boy still yearning for affirmation, just wanted to withdraw. "Fine," I answered, my voice empty. "I'll be out by the end of the month." Not only for Richard, but for the family I never truly had, for the bond one had always hoped would grow between Richard and me, but never did. As I watched Michael walk away, arm around Emma, kids running ahead, that evening I began packing, sifting through boxes of memories I wasn't even sure I wanted to save. I couldn't help but wonder if Richard had been right all along. Sometimes, the world was harsh, and you still ended up with nothing to show for it. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. More unbelievable stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them. A week later, I had sold out of my childhood house. For now, I was staying with Mom's sister, Linda, trying to decide what to do next. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the foreign ceiling, my mind buzzing with anger, thinking about Michael and how he got here. He was undeniably the preferred child growing up. Richard doted on him in a way he never did with me. From the time Michael was born, it was endless birthday celebrations with all his friends, new toys just because, and pleased smiles when he brought home a good report card. All the things I had longed for but never received. I remember one birthday, Michael was about 8, and Richard hired an entire arcade for him and his friends. I was 17 then, and I couldn't help but compare it to my own birthdays, which usually featured a quiet meal and perhaps a small gift. But as Michael aged, something changed. The sweet little boy who used to follow me around, wanting to play, developed into a depressed adolescent who seemed to hate everything and everyone. He started treating me like I was invisible, and he spoke angrily back to our parents. It was like watching a stranger seize my little brother's body. One specific occasion still burns in my memory. When he was around 16, Richard asked us both about our grades during dinner, a regular inquiry. This time, though, Michael burst. He started screaming about how he despised living under Richard's control, how sick he felt of the pressure. He bolted from the house, slamming the door, so fiercely a picture fell from the wall. Richard just sat there, looking older and sadder than I had ever seen him, not the angry man I'd anticipated would pursue Michael and drag him back. Michael's behavior only worsened as he grew older. He began dating a series of girls, each relationship ending messily. Late nights, missed curfews, and shouting battles with Richard rocked the home. I tried to stay out of it, but the constant stress inevitably affected me. When Richard tried to discuss respect and duty, Michael just laughed it off. "You can't control me anymore," he'd sneer, and Richard would get this expression, a mix of wrath and despair, that I had never seen before. Then came the day he turned up with Emma as his bride. None of us even knew he was seeing someone seriously, let alone planning to marry. Walking in with Emma, little more than a teenager herself, he announced they had eloped. I shall never forget Richard's expression. For once, he was silent. Mom tried to calm things down, to welcome Emma into the family, but the air was thick with tension. Richard seemed to be straining to keep his cool, to find the right words for his son. Emma claimed she wanted to live free from family meddling, so Michael packed his bags and left. Just like that, he pledged to visit and keep in touch, but those pledges soon dropped off the list. Weeks became months devoid of communication. His calls were always quick and often tinged with conflict. I assumed, definitely, he would come back when Mom fell ill, but he did not. He asked periodically how she was doing, but always had a reason for why he couldn't visit. Work was hectic, the kids were sick, the car was in the shop. Something was always there. I recall sitting next to Mom's hospital bed, seeing her eyes flash with hope every time the phone rang, only for them to dim when it wasn't Michael. More often than not, it wasn't. It was me who had to phone Michael to let him know she died. He sounded full of regret for not visiting more frequently. He claimed he would try to make it to the funeral, but ultimately, he did not show up. Just a flower arrangement delivered to the funeral home, accompanied by a card offering his sympathies. Feeling his absence like a physical hurt, I stood at the burial, wondering how we had become so far apart. And right now, here we are again. Not motivated by love or obligation, but by pure gain. The prodigal son returns for what he can get. Thinking about how he swooped in and demanded the house, acting as though he had some inherent right to it when he had left us years earlier, made me furious. I considered all the evenings I spent seeing to Richard, all the doctor's visits I accompanied, all the meals I made, and all the expenses I paid. And for what? To be thrown aside, just like I never really mattered at all. But then my phone rang. As I staggered through these terrible thoughts, it was Mr. Thompson, Richard's attorney, telling me he had to talk about something vital. He sounded serious, asking me to come back to the house tomorrow. Uncertain what to believe, part of me hoped there was a mistake, that maybe I wouldn't have to abandon my home after all. But knowing how let down I had been in the past, another side of me was terrified to hope. I wondered what tomorrow would hold. As I hung up the phone, whatever it was, I was clear on one thing. This wasn't going to be easy. I tossed and turned the remainder of the night, my head ablaze with possibilities. Something so crucial that Mr. Thompson had to see me personally. Could Richard have left something for me after all? Is it conceivable? Or is this only another letdown in a long run of disappointments? The next day, I stood before my childhood house, feeling like a stranger. To my astonishment, Michael's car was also in the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I entered. The familiar creak of the front door sent a pulse through me. Sitting at the dining room table, Mr. Thompson had a stack of documents before him. Michael and Emma were there too, clearly agitated. With his demeanor unreadable, the attorney motioned for me to sit down. I sat, keenly aware of the tension in the room. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice firm and businesslike. "I know this is a tough period, but there are some crucial issues about Richard's we should talk about." Michael leaned forward, a smug grin on his face. "Let's wrap this up. I want to start right away, as I have plans for this home." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, seeming uncomfortable. "We should really talk about that. Richard's will states that Jake has been left the house, and in fact, all of his possessions." The room went completely still. For a moment, I felt as though I couldn't breathe. Had I heard him precisely? After all these years of believing I was never good enough, Richard had left everything to me. Michael was the first to react. "What?" he yelled, leaping to his feet so fast his chair dropped backwards. "That's not possible. I'm his real son. He wouldn't hand everything to Jake." Mr. Thompson stayed cool under Michael's rage. "I'm rather worried it's rather obvious. Richard's will specifically says that Jake is to inherit all of his possessions, including the house, his savings, and his personal items." What I was hearing defied belief. It seemed illogical. All those years of criticism, of feeling as though I could never measure up. And now this? Michael was pacing now, his face flushed with rage. "This is nuts. He must have been insane when he composed this. I'll dispute it. I'll bring this before court." Mr. Thompson gave a headshake. "That is not what I would counsel. Richard prepared this, rather carefully. He included a letter outlining his choice and had it attested and notarized. Challenging it effectively would be quite difficult." Michael turned to face me, his eyes flaming with resentment. "You did this, didn't you? You somehow twisted him against me." Still in disbelief, I raised my hands. I knew nothing about any of this. I assumed he was forwarding everything to you. Before things could get much more heated, Mr. Thompson stepped in. If I may, I think Richard's letter might help to clarify his choice. Pulling out an envelope, he started to read. To my sons, should you be reading this, I am gone. Though I hope I can clarify. I know you too may find my choice shocking. I have made lots of mistakes over my life. Among my largest was not treating both of my sons equally in terms of love. I expected too much from Jake, was too demanding, never showed enough affection. And I treated Michael too kindly. I never set appropriate limits, or imparted any lessons of value. As I consider my life in my last years, I came to see something crucial. A real son is defined by behavior rather than blood. And in that sense, Jake behaved as a real son ought to do. He stayed with me through trying circumstances and looked after me even when I didn't deserve it. All the traits I attempted to teach but failed to show myself, patience, kindness, and responsibility he exhibited. I am so leaving everything to him, not as a punishment to Michael, but rather as a tribute to the kid who really embodied the ideals I cherish. I hope you both have the compassion to see and pardon the errors of an elderly guy. The room went still once Mr. Thompson closed his book. Tears came to me, a lifetime of feelings rising inside me. All those years I felt Richard didn't care, that he considered me a disappointment, but he had been observing, noting, valuing in his own unique sense. Michael froze momentarily, his face a mask of shock and rage. Then he silently seized Emma's hand, rushed out, slamming the door behind him. His car started up and ran out of the driveway, a screeching, final act of disobedience. Turning to me, Mr. Thompson wore a gentle grin. I know this is a lot to absorb, Jake, he continued. Richard expressed his preferences quite precisely. He wished for you a safe future, free from financial concerns. I nodded, still not sure I understood exactly what had transpired. Thank you, I managed to say. I need some time to consider all this. Mr. Thompson stopped as he neatly folded his documents. There is still one more item. Your stepfather left you a personal note as well. You read it in private, he questioned. He gave me an envelope with my name written in Richard's recognizable handwriting on it. I took it, knowing that within were words I had waited a lifetime to hear. With shaky hands, I sat by myself in the quiet house, flipping the envelope in my hands after Mr. Thompson departed. At last, I plucked up the courage to open it and read. Jake, dear, though I know I've never been excellent at communicating my emotions, hopefully this letter will help to offset some of my faults. I'm proud of the man you have evolved into. Though I failed as a parent, I had a challenging upbringing and was never taught appropriate affectionate behavior. I reasoned that the best way to equip you for life was to be rigorous and challenge you. I regret the suffering I caused you. Now, I understand I was mistaken. Particularly in these last several years, your compassion and commitment have shown me what actual strength and integrity look like. You now, more than ever, reflect the guy I always dreamed you would be. I apologize for not telling you these things when I was living. With my last wishes and this letter, maybe you will have some peace and protection. Remember yourself, son. You are deserving of all the joy available. Love, Richard. Tears streamed down my face as I closed the letter. All those years of feeling inadequate, of thinking Richard didn't care, and now this. It was overpowering. Over the next days, I battled to make sense of everything. Once a cause of stress and bad memories, the house felt different now. It belonged to me in a deeper sense, as much as legally. It was evidence of Richard's affection, sincere if spoken too late. Michael hasn't gotten in touch since he departed that day, and I'm not sure whether he will. Though I know it will take time, part of me hopes we can reconcile someday. The pain is still raw, and our distance seems greater than it did years ago. I have given the complexity of love and the numerous ways people show it a lot of thought. Though often harsh, Richard's love was sincere. It was flawed. In his own sense, he was working to equip me for life and build my resilience. Though I wish he could have discovered a softer approach, I now better understand him. Regarding inheritance, it goes beyond just money and real estate. One has responsibility. Richard trusted me to continue on his legacy and to live the ideals he loved. Although it's a difficult work, I'm resolved to meet expectations. I have chosen to create a scholarship fund in Richard's name from a portion of the bequest. It's for children from difficult situations, so they may have the education and chances they might otherwise miss. Taking the teachings he imparted on me and paying them forward seems like the proper approach to honor his memory. I'm still trying to make sense of everything as I sit here now in the house that turned unexpectedly into mine. Fathers and sons have a complex relationship, marked by frequently unsaid feelings and misunderstandings. Richard and I never had the relationship I wanted when he was alive, but his last act has given me an opportunity to better know him, to see the love always there, buried under the surface. I wish Dad had told me these things during his lifetime. We could have had talks, cleared the air, perhaps even created the relationship I so yearned for. But life does not always provide us tidy ends or flawless closure. Right now, I'm concentrating on respecting Richard's memory by practicing the ideals he sought to inculcate in me. Work hard, be conscientious, and most importantly, love those who matter. I'm glad to be carrying on a legacy. Looking ahead, I experience a range of emotions: sadness for what was lost, thankfulness for what I have, and hope for what is to come. Richard's unexpected legacy has given me a fresh perspective of family, love, and forgiveness, in addition to financial stability. Though I never expected it, this is a new chapter in my life, and I am ready to face it, bearing with me the lessons of the past and hope for a better future. That might ultimately be the best inheritance of all. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever been through something like this with family? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.